My little boy was found alone on the highway at 2 a.m. I never knew my wife would go this far. When police asked him what happened, his words broke me completely. The shop smelled of motor oil and old coffee, a scent Andrew Ward had grown to love over the years. At 2:07 a.m., he was finishing up the last of the day's paperwork. His calloused fingers smudged with grease as he tallied receipts under the flickering fluorescent light. The garage stood silent except for the hum of the refrigerator in the corner and the occasional ping of cooling metal from the last car he'd worked on. His phone buzzed against the steel workbench. The vibration loud in the quiet. Andrew glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He considered ignoring it. Nothing good came from calls at this hour, but something made him answer. This Andrew Ward, a man's voice, official and tired. Speaking. This is Trooper Daniels with the Missouri State Highway Patrol. We've got a situation here on Route 17. Just past mile marker 43. Found a boy walking the shoulder. Says his name is Miles Ward. Says you're his father. Andrew's hand tightened around the phone. The words didn't make sense at first, like hearing a foreign language. Miles was 4 years old. Miles was supposed to be asleep in his bed at Tara's place, tucked under the dinosaur blanket Andrew had bought him last Christmas. That's Andrew's voice caught. He cleared his throat. That's my son. Where is he now? We've got him at the station. He's okay. Just cold and scared. How fast can you get here? 15 minutes. Ender didn't remember grabbing his keys or locking the shop. The October night, air hit his face like a slap as he ran to his truck, his breath forming clouds in the darkness. His mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. An accident. Tara hurt. The house on fire, but the trooper had said Miles was walking. Walking alone on a highway in the middle of the night. The engine roared to life and Andrew peeled out of the parking lot, his headlights cutting through the empty streets of Redwood Crossing. The small Missouri town looked different at this hour. Storefronts dark, traffic lights blinking yellow. Not another soul in sight. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The state police station sat on the edge of town. A squat brick building with harsh white lights illuminating the parking lot. Andrew killed the engine and was out of the truck before it fully stopped. His boots hitting the pavement as it ran. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and industrial cleaner replaced the garage smells. A young officer at the desk looked up, started to speak, but Andrew was already scanning a room. Then he saw him. Miles sat on a wooden bench against the far wall, drowning in an adult-sized police jacket, his small legs dangling off the edge. His face was pale, strewn with dried tears, and there was a scrape on his left knee. Blood dried in a thin line down his shin. When he saw Andrew, his whole body seemed to collapse inward with relief. "Daddy." The word was barely a whisper, but it tore through Andrew's chest. He crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of his son, pulling the small body into his arms. Miles clung to him, his little hands fisting in Andrew's work shirt, and Andrew could feel him shaking. "I've got you," Andrew murmured into his son's hair. "I've got you. You're safe now." Trooper Daniels appeared beside them, a thick man with gray at his temples and kind eyes that had seemed too much. He waited until Andrew looked up before speaking. "Mr. Ward, we need to ask Miles a few questions. Just understand what happened tonight." Andrew nodded but didn't let go of his son. He shifted so Miles sat on his knee, still wrapped in a jacket, still pressed against his father's chest. Daniels crouched down to eye level, his voice gentle. "Miles, buddy, can you tell me what happened? How did you end up on the road?" Miles's fingers tightened on Andrew's shirt. His voice came out small and flat, like he was reciting something he'd been taught not to say. "Mom said I had to leave because I cost too much." The words landed in the quiet station like stones dropping into still water. Andrew felt them settle in his chest, cold and heavy. His arms tightened around Miles instinctively, protectively, while his mind struggled to process what he just heard. Danielle's expression hardened. "Your mom told you to leave the house." Miles nodded against Andrew's chest. "Was anyone else there? Was she home?" "She went out with Ree. She said I was too loud and I make everything expensive and I had to go find Daddy." Andrew's jaw clenched so hard his teeth itched. He kept his breathing steady control because Miles needed him calm right now. But inside something fundamental had shifted, not broken. Breaking implied weakness, fragility. What happened inside Andrew Ward in that moment was different. It was a hardening, a crystallization of every frustration and fear he'd carried for 4 years since the divorce. Every missed phone call, every bruise he noticed on Miles's arms that Tara explained away. Every time she'd spend his child support on new clothes while Miles wore shoes 2 sizes too small. He would never forgive Tara Lundell. Not tonight. Not ever. But he wouldn't confront her with tears or anger or desperate pleas. He would destroy her with logic, with evidence, with the cold machinery of the law. He would dismantle her life piece by piece until there was nothing left but the truth everyone could see. "Mr. Ward," Daniel stood, gesturing toward a small office. "We need to talk." Andrew carried Miles with him, unwilling to let go. In the office, Daniels closed the door and leaned against the desk, his expression grim. "We're going to need to file a report. Child abandonment, possibly endangerment. Where's the mother now?" "I don't know." Andrew's voice was steady, almost eerily calm. "She has Miles Tuesday through Friday. I get him weekends and Mondays. She lives in the duplex on Carver Street. We'll send someone to check on her, make sure she's aware of the situation." Daniels pulled out a form. "Did you have any indication she might do something like this?" Andrew thought about the last 4 years. The pattern he'd been too hopeful to fully acknowledge. "She's always treated him like a burden," Andrew said quietly. Miles had finally stopped shaking his breathing evening out against Andrew's shoulder. "Complained about the cost of everything. Dropped him with neighbors whenever she wanted to go out. I tried reporting concerns to child services once, but he paused, remembering she's good at performing. She cried, said she was overwhelmed and stressed. They bought it. This time there's no performance that'll explain a 4-year-old on a highway at 2 a.m. Daniel started writing. "We'll need your contact information, and we'll be in touch about next steps. For tonight, take your boy home. He's been through enough." Andrew stood, adjusting Miles in his arms. The boy had fallen asleep, his small body finally relaxing. Andrew looked down at his son's face, the same nose as his own, the same stubborn chin, and felt that cold determination settle deeper. "Thank you, Trooper." Mr. Ward. Daniels met his eyes. "Document everything from here on out. Photos, times, conversations, everything. You're going to need it." Andrew nodded once and carried his son out into the night. The drive home was quiet. Miles slept curled in the passenger seat, still wrapped in the police jacket, his hand clutching Andrew's work shirt like a lifeline. Andrew drove slowly, carefully, his mind already moving through the steps ahead. The past 4 years played through his memory like a film he'd seen too many times. Meeting Tara when he was 28, fresh from technical school, working his first job at a mechanic shop in Jefferson City. She'd been beautiful, confident, from a wealthy suburb near Kansas City. She'd seemed so sure of everything, so polished compared to his grease-stained hands and small-town simplicity. The relationship moved fast, too fast, probably. Pregnant within 6 months, married 3 weeks later in a courthouse ceremony Tara complained about for months afterward. She'd wanted her family there, but they'd cut her off years before over something she never fully explained. Money, probably. It was always money with Tara's family. Miles was born on a rainy April morning, and for a few months, Andrew had believed they might make it work. But Tara had never wanted to be a mother. She wanted the idea of it, the attention, the sympathy, the validation, the reality of a crying infant. Sleepless nights, and stretched finances killed whatever affection she'd had for Andrew. The divorce came when Miles was 6 months old. Andrew didn't fight it. He just wanted his son safe and cared for. He agreed to shared custody, to child support payments that took half his paycheck, to letting Tara choose her days. He thought if he was reasonable, if he cooperated, things would be okay. He'd been wrong. Over the following years, Andrew watched his son become an afterthought in Tara's life. She fed Miles cheap food, ramen, frozen dinners, fast food, while posting pictures of expensive restaurant meals with friends. She left him with elderly neighbors for hours, sometimes overnight, without warning. She bought herself new phones, new clothes, while Miles wore hand-me-downs from a cousin Andrew didn't even know he had. Andrew tried to help. He bought clothes that Tara said disappeared or got ruined. He packed extra food in Miles's backpack. He documented strange bruises, behavioral changes, moments when Miles would flinch at sudden movements. He called child services once, his heart pounding, convinced he was doing the right thing. The social worker had been young, overwhelmed, skeptical. Tara had put on a perfect show, tears streaming, voice breaking as she talked about being a single mother, about doing her best, about the stress of raising a child alone. She'd even implied Andrew was harassing her, trying to get out of paying support. The social worker had given Andrew a look that said she'd seen this before, bitter fathers making false claims, and closed the case. Andrew had felt the door closing on his ability to protect his son. He'd learned to be more careful, more patient. He'd waited for Tara to make a mistake big enough that no one could explain it away. Tonight, she had. He pulled into the driveway of his small house. A rental, nothing fancy, but clean and warm and filled with Miles's toys. He carried his son inside, laying him gently on the couch while he turned on lights and adjusted the thermostat. Miles stirred but didn't wake. Andrew knelt beside the couch, looking at the scrape on Miles's knee. He retrieved the first aid kit from the bathroom and carefully cleaned the wound, applied antibiotic ointment, covered it with a bandage decorated with cartoon trucks. Miles whimpered in his sleep, but didn't wake. Then Andrew pulled out his phone and took photos. The scrape, the jacket that was far too large. Miles's face pale and exhausted even in sleep. He noted the time, the date, the circumstances, every detail. He sat in the armchair across from the couch as the night slowly gave way to dawn, watching his son sleep and planning his next move. He didn't feel angry. Anger was hot and immediate and uncontrolled. What he felt was cold, precise, patient. Tara had declared war the moment she sent their 4-year-old son onto a dark highway. She just didn't know it yet. Andrew waited until the sun rose, painting the living room in shades of gold and amber before making the first call. Marlon Vance answered on the third ring, his voice rough with sleep. "This better be important, Andrew." She left him on a highway. Silence, then Miles. State police found him walking Route 17 at 2 in the morning. She told him he cost too much and sent him out to find me. Andrew heard movement on the other end. Marlon getting out of bed, probably his footsteps creaking across old floorboards. Marlon had handled Andrew's divorce, had watched the custody arrangement form, had seen the frustration Andrew carried for years. He was in his 60s, a small-town lawyer with more integrity than ambition. The kind of man who took cases because they were right, not because they paid well. Is he okay? Physically, yes. Scrape on his knee, cold, terrified, but alive. And Tara, I don't know where she was. Miles said she went out with her boyfriend, left him alone, and told him to leave. Marlon exhaled slowly. Okay, listen to me. This is the break we've been waiting for, but we have to be smart. We can't let emotion drive this. I'm not emotional. Andrew's voice was flat, certain. I'm done playing nice, Marlon. I'm done trying to co-parent with someone who sees our son as a financial burden. I want full custody, no shared anything, no visitation without supervision. I want her out of his life in every way that matters. Another pause. Andrew, this won't be simple. She'll lie. She'll perform. You know she will. Then we make the truth louder than her lies. That's what I'm talking about. Andrew heard the faint sound of coffee being poured. We'll need documentation. Every interaction from now on, every bruise, every late pickup, every text message. Can you do that without tipping her off? Already started. Good. Marlon's voice shifted into planning mode. We'll file for emergency custody modification. The police report will be our foundation, but we need more. We need a pattern. Can you talk to neighbors? Anyone who might have seen her neglect? Yes. Do it quietly. We don't want her lawyering up before we're ready. And Andrew, Marlon's voice softened slightly. I know you're angry. You have every right to be, but you need to stay calm. Stay focused. The court will look at you, too. They want to see you're stable, rational, the better parent. Can you do that? Andrew looked at his son, still sleeping on the couch, one small hand curled under his cheek. I can do whatever it takes. After hanging up, Andrew made breakfast quietly. Scrambled eggs, toast, juice. Miles woke around 8, blinking in a morning light, momentarily confused about where he was. Then he saw Andrew and relief flooded his small face. Daddy. Hey, buddy. Andrew sat on the edge of the couch. How do you feel? Tired? Miles's voice was. Is Mom mad? The question hit Andrew harder than he expected. Not is Mom okay or where's Mom, but is Mom mad? As if her anger was the natural consequence of Miles's existence. Don't worry about Mom right now, Andrew said gently. You're staying with me for a while. Okay, we're going to have breakfast, and then maybe we can watch some cartoons. How does that sound? Miles nodded, his expression uncertain but willing. Andrew carried him to the kitchen, settled him in his chair, and watched him eat slowly, methodically, like he wasn't sure when the next meal might come. Andrew's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Trooper Daniels. Officers went to the Carver Street address. Mother wasn't home. Left a note for her to contact us. We'll keep you updated. So, Tara still wasn't home. Hours after sending her son onto a highway. She was still out. Probably with Reese called her, the new boyfriend Andrew had heard about but never met. Younger than Tara. No job that Andrew knew of. The kind of guy who smiled too much and meant none of it. Andrew saved the message, screenshotted it, backed it up to his cloud storage. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. The day passed quietly. Miles seemed content to stay close, watching television, playing with his trucks on the living room floor. Andrew worked from home when he could, doing paperwork and ordering parts online. He kept Miles in his line of sight at all times, noting every small behavior. How Miles startled at loud noises. How he hoarded snacks in his pockets. How he asked permission before doing anything. These were the behaviors of a child who'd learned to be invisible, to take up as little space as possible. Around 3 in the afternoon, Andrew's phone rang. Tara. He let it go to voicemail, then listened as her voice, bright, casual, annoyed, filled his ear. Hey, so the police left some weird note at my place. Something about Miles. Call me back. This better not be you causing drama again. Not a trace of worry, not a hint that she'd sent her son into the night and hadn't thought about him since. Andrew saved the voicemail. Then he called back, putting the phone on speaker and setting it on the counter with the voice recorder app running. She answered immediately. Finally. What's this about? Miles was found walking Route 17 at 2 this morning. What? That's impossible. He was asleep. He was on a highway. Tara alone at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, I don't know how that happened. He must have snuck out. You know how he is. He told the state police you sent him out. Said you told him he cost too much. Silence. Andrew could practically hear her recalculating. That's ridiculous. He's 4. You probably dreamed it. Kids make up stories. The police have a report. There's a record now. This is your fault. Her voice shifted, turning sharp. You turn him against me. You make him say things. You've been trying to take him away since the divorce. I didn't put him on a highway. I didn't either. And if you try to use this against me, I swear to God, Andrew. He hung up. His hands were steady. His breathing was calm. He had what he needed. Her immediate denial. Her attempt to blame Miles. Her threat. All recorded, all time-stamped, all saved. Miles appeared in the doorway, his dinosaur blanket trailing behind him. Was that Mom? Yeah, buddy. Is she coming to get me? The hope in his voice was small, uncertain, like he didn't quite believe it himself, but had to ask anyway. It broke Andrew's heart and hardened his resolve simultaneously. Not tonight, Andrew said. But you're safe here. You know that, right? Miles nodded slowly, then quietly. I like it better here. Andrew pulled his son into a hug, breathing in the scent of kid shampoo and sleep, and made a silent promise. Miles would never have to beg for safety again. Never have to wonder if he was wanted. Never have to walk a dark highway alone. Whatever it took to make that true, Andrew would do it. Even if it meant destroying the woman who'd given Miles life, especially then. The next morning, Andrew drove Miles to preschool. The director, Mrs. Patterson, met them at the door with a concerned expression. The state police had called ahead. She explained quietly to let them know about the incident. She promised to keep Miles close to call if anything seemed off. Andrew watched his son disappear into the colorful classroom. Already moving toward the blocks with another little boy, and felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier on his shoulders. He couldn't be with Miles every second. He had to trust others to help, to watch, to care. It went against every instinct he had right now. But he also had work to do. His first stop was the duplex on Carver Street. Tara's car wasn't there. He didn't knock. Instead, he walked the perimeter slowly, noting details. The garbage bins overflowing with takeout containers and wine bottles. The broken lock on the back gate. The window screen hanging loose on one side. The yard littered with cigarette, but Tara didn't smoke, which meant Reese did, which meant Reese spent significant time here. Andrew took photos of everything. His second stop was Darlene Fritz's house, 3 doors down from Tara's duplex. Darlene was in her 60s, a retired teacher with sharp eyes and a soft heart. She'd babysat Miles a few times when Tara needed emergency coverage, which usually meant Tara wanted to go out and hadn't bothered to plan ahead. Darlene answered the door wearing a cardigan and reading glasses, a mystery novel in one hand. Her expression shifted from pleasant to concerned when she saw Andrew. Oh, honey, I heard what happened. Is Miles all right? He's okay. Physically, Andrew hesitated. Can I talk to you for a minute? She stepped back, gesturing him inside. Her house smelled like cinnamon and old books. They sat in her living room surrounded by photos of grandchildren and shelves of well-worn paperbacks. I need to ask you about Tara. Andrew began about how she treats Miles. Darlene's mouth tightened. What do you want to know? The truth. Whatever you've seen. She was quiet for a moment, her fingers worrying the edge of her cardigan. Then she spoke, her voice sad but certain. That boy cries for her every night. I can hear him through the walls. Our houses are close, you know. He calls for her and she never answers, or if she does, it's to yell at him to be quiet. Darlene looked down at her hands. She brings him to me at all hours. Sometimes she says she'll be back in an hour and I don't see her for 8. Once she left him here overnight without warning. I woke up and he was still asleep on my couch. How often does this happen? 2, 3 times a week. More recently, since that boyfriend moved in, Andrew felt his jaw tighten. Race, I don't know his name. Younger guy drives a red Mustang, smokes on the porch, loud music at all hours. She met Andrew's eyes. I don't like the way he looks at Miles. Cold, you know, like the child's an inconvenience. Have you ever seen him hurt Miles? Not physically, but I've heard him yelling, and I've seen Miles's face when he comes to my door. That boy is scared. Would you be willing to write this down? In a statement, Darlene didn't hesitate. If it helps keep that child safe, I'll write whatever you need. Andrew left 20 minutes later with a signed statement, dated and witnessed by Darlene's signature. His third piece of evidence. Over the next few days, Andrew moved quietly through Redwood Crossing, talking to anyone who might have seen something. The clerk at the grocery store remembered Tara leaving Miles in the car alone while she shopped. The child crying visible through the window. The manager at the gas station recalled Tara paying for cigarettes and lottery tickets while claiming she didn't have enough for milk. The elderly man who lived across from the duplex had seen Tara loading the car late at night multiple times, leaving Miles visible in the window alone. Each conversation added another piece to the puzzle. Each statement was written, signed, saved. Marlon called midweek with an update. I've filed for emergency custody modification. There'll be a hearing in 2 weeks. The judge is Catherine Brennan. She's fair but tough. She'll want to see clear evidence of danger to the child. I'm gathering it. Good. I also found something interesting. Papers rustled in the background. Reese called her. Tara's boyfriend. He's got a history. Andrew's grip tightened on his phone. What kind of history? 3 years ago, he was investigated for child endangerment. He was dating a woman with a 2-year-old. Left the kid alone in a motel room while he went gambling at a casino. Kid was found by housekeeping the next morning alone for 8 hours. The mother dropped the charges, but the report still exists. Something cold settled in Andrew's chest. Not surprise, confirmation. So, Tara's living with a man who has a documented history of abandoning children. It gets better or worse, depending on how you look at it. Reese has been unemployed for 6 months. No income, which means he's living off Tara, which means he's living off your child support payments. Andrew felt the pieces clicking into place. Tara's increased neglect, her sudden defensiveness about money, her irritation with Miles. She was supporting Ree, which meant less money for Miles, which meant Miles had become even more of a burden. Can we use this in court? Absolutely. A documented history of child endangerment connected directly to the person Tara has chosen to have around your son combined with the highway incident. Andrew, this could win us full custody. Could. Nothing's guaranteed, but we're building a hell of a case. After hanging up, Andrew sat in his truck outside Miles's preschool, watching parents arrive to pick up their children. Happy reunions, excited chatter, little hands reaching for bigger ones. This was what childhood should look like. Safe, expected, loved. He thought about Tara, about the woman he'd married and the woman she'd become. Had she always been this way? Had he been too naive to see it, or had something in her genuinely changed, twisted by resentment and unfulfilled expectations? It didn't matter. Whatever she'd been before, she was dangerous now. And Andrew would make sure everyone could see it. Miles came bounding out of the building, his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders, his face lighting up when he saw Andrew's truck. That smile, that pure, uncomplicated joy at seeing his father was everything Andrew needed to remember why he was doing this. Daddy, I made a picture. Can't wait to see it, buddy. That night, as Andrew tucked Miles into bed, the bed that was becoming his permanent bed, though neither of them had said it aloud yet, Miles looked up at him with serious eyes. Am I really too expensive? The question hit Andrew like a physical blow. He sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. No, Miles. You're not expensive. You're priceless. That means you're worth more than any amount of money. Do you understand? Miles nodded slowly, uncertain. Your mom. Andrew paused, weighing truth against protection. Your mom made a mistake. A big one. But that's not your fault. None of this is your fault. But she said, I know what she said. She was wrong. Miles was quiet for a moment. Then so softly, Andrew almost missed it. I'm glad I'm here. Andrew pulled his son close, feeling the small body relax against him. Me, too, buddy. Me, 2. After Miles fell asleep, Andrew returned to the living room and pulled up the file Marlon had sent about Reese Calder. Police reports, court documents, witness statements from 3 years ago. The details were damning. A child left alone in a locked motel room, crying for hours, no food, no water, no care. The mother had defended Ree, said it was a misunderstanding, dropped the charges. But the investigating officer's notes painted a clear picture of a man who prioritized gambling over a child's safety. And Tara had brought this man into Miles's life. Andrew's phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Ward, this is Alicia Briner." Ree called his ex. "Can we talk?" Andrew stared at the message. How had she found his number? What did she want? He responded, "How did you get this number?" "Mutual friend, I heard what happened to your son. I think you should know some things about Ree. Call me tomorrow at noon." Andrew sent his number and sat back, his mind racing. Whatever Alicia Brenner had to say, it would be another piece of the puzzle, another weapon in the arsenal he was building. Tara had started this war the night she sent Miles onto a dark highway. Andrew was going to finish it. The days leading up to the phone call with Alicia Brenner felt strangely suspended, like the quiet before a storm. Andrew maintained his routine. Drop Miles at preschool, work at the shop, pick Miles up, dinner, bedtime stories. But underneath the normally, he was preparing for battle. At exactly noon the following day, Andrew's phone rang. He was in his office at the shop. The door closed, a notepad and pen ready on his desk. "This is Andrew. Mr. Ward, thank you for taking my call." The woman's voice was tired but determined, carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much. "I'm Alicia Brenner. I was with Reese Calder for 2 years. We had a daughter together." Andrew's pen stilled. "Ah, she's safe. She lives with my parents now. Full custody. I got clean, got away from Ree. Got my life back, but it took almost losing everything. What do you need to tell me?" Alicia took a breath. "Ree is dangerous. Not in the obvious way. He's never hit anyone, never threatened anyone directly. But he's manipulative. He finds women who are vulnerable, who have something he wants. Money, a place to stay, respectability, and he bleeds them dry. Tara, when I heard about what happened to your son, I knew the pattern. Reese doesn't like kids. Sees them as competition for attention and resources. When I was with him, he'd leave our daughter alone for hours. Sometimes he'd lock her in her room so she wouldn't bother him. The incident 3 years ago, the casino, the motel, that wasn't a one-time mistake. That was who he is." Andrew was writing quickly, recording every word. "Why didn't the charges stick?" "Because I was stupid." Her voice cracked slightly. "I loved him. Or I thought I did. He convinced me it was all a misunderstanding. That the police were overreacting. That if I didn't defend him, they'd take our daughter away. So, I lied. I said it was my fault that I'd asked him to watch her and he'd made a mistake. I protected him and my daughter paid the price. What changed? He left me 6 months later for someone else. Someone with more money, a better situation. And I finally saw what I'd been protecting. A man who'd put my daughter in danger without a second thought. A man who'd manipulated me into covering for him." Andrew processed this information, connecting it to what he already knew. "You said Tara's vulnerable. What makes you think that?" "I did some research, found her social media, mutual friends. She's estranged from her family. She's got a history of bad relationships. She's overwhelmed and probably resentful of being a single mother. That's Reese's type. He targets women like that. Women who will make excuses for him because they're desperate for help, for companionship, for someone to tell them they're doing okay. And my son's in the middle of that." "Yes." Alicia's voice gentled. "Mr. Ward, I should have spoken up 3 years ago. I should have told the truth about Ree then. I can't undo that. But I can tell you this. If you're going to court to protect your son, I'll testify. I'll tell them everything about Ree. His pattern, his manipulation, his history. Maybe it'll make a difference this time." Andrew felt something shift in his chest. Not hope exactly, but certainty. This was the missing piece. Not just the police report from 3 years ago, but a living witness willing to testify about Reese's pattern of behavior. "I'll have my lawyer contact you. And Alicia." Andrew paused. "Thank you for speaking up this time." After they hung up, Andrew called Marin immediately and relayed the conversation. Marlon whistled low and long. "Andrew, this is it. This is the twist we needed. A pattern of behavior, a documented history, a witness willing to testify. Combined with everything else we have, we can make the case that Tara isn't just neglectful. She's actively choosing a dangerous partner over her child's safety." "When's the hearing?" "Next Thursday, 10 days. Think you can keep it together until then? I'm fine, Marlon. I know you think you are, but Andrew, listen to me. You need to be more than fine in that courtroom. You need to be the picture of stability, calm, rational, the responsible parent. No matter what Tarara says, no matter how she spins things, you can't react emotionally. Can you do that? Andrew thought about the cold certainty he'd felt since that night at the police station. The way his anger had crystallized into something harder, sharper, more controlled. I can do that. Good. I'll prepare Alicia, get her statement, make sure she's ready to testify. You focus on documenting everything with Miles. Every meal, every bedtime, every moment of stability you're providing. That's your story in court. Not that Tara is a monster, but that you're the better choice, the safer choice. The next week passed in careful documentation. Andrew photographed every meal he made for Miles. Balanced, nutritious, varied. He noted, every night Miles slept through without nightmares. Every morning he woke up smiling. He recorded their conversations. The way Miles was slowly opening up, laughing more, playing with more confidence. He also installed cameras in his house. Small discreet ones in common areas. Not to spy, but to document. If Tara accused him of anything, he'd have proof of how he treated Miles, of how safe and stable this home was. 3 days before the hearing, Tara showed up at the shop. Andrew was under a car replacing brake pads when he heard the sharp click of shoes on concrete. He rolled out from under the vehicle and found Tara standing in the doorway, backlit by afternoon sun. She looked different, thinner, harder, her makeup heavier than he remembered. She wore a coat that was too expensive for someone who claimed she couldn't afford to feed her son properly, and her nails were freshly manicured, painted a bright red. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. Andrew stood slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "Call my lawyer. Don't be dramatic. This is about Miles. Everything is about Miles. That's the problem. You never understood that." Tara's expression tightened. "You've turned him against me. You're poisoning his mind. I didn't put him on a highway at 2 a.m. She flinched. And for a moment, Andrew thought he saw something like guilt flash across her face. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by defensive anger. "That was a misunderstanding." He wandered out. "I was asleep. You told the police on the phone that night that you let him go because he wanted to see me. Which version is true, Tara?" She blinked, caught in the contradiction. "I was confused. It was late. I didn't know what I was saying. Miles told the police you said he cost too much. That you sent him out to find me. He's 4. He doesn't understand. Then explain it to the judge next week." Tara's face drained of color. "You're actually doing this. You're actually trying to take him away." "I'm trying to keep him safe. There's a difference. I'm his mother. You're the woman who gave birth to him. Being a mother is more than biology." Something flickered in Tarara's eyes. Rage, maybe. Or fear. "You think you're so perfect. You think this little life you've built makes you better than me. But you're just a mechanic, Andrew. You live in a rental. You work with your hands. I could give Miles more. You could give him nothing but pain and neglect. You already have." Tara stepped closer. Her voice dropping to something venomous. "I will destroy you in court. I will tell them how you harass me, how you turn Miles against me, how you're unstable and controlling. I'll make them see what you really are." Andrew met her gaze steadily. "Go ahead and try." She stared at him for a long moment, searching for weakness, for fear. She found neither. Finally, she turned and walked out, her heels echoing against the concrete. Andrew waited until her car pulled away before returning to work. His hand steady on the wrench, his mind clear. Let her threaten. Let her plan. Let her believe she could win with lies and performance. He had the truth. And in 10 days, everyone would see it. That evening, Andrew sat with Miles on the couch reading a picture book about a dragon who learned to be brave. Miles leaned against him, warm and solid and safe. And Andrew felt that cold determination solidify even further. He would win this. Not because he was perfect, not because he had money or status or charm, but because he showed up, because he cared. Because when his son needed him, Andrew had been there. And Tara hadn't. That was the only story that mattered. The night before the hearing, Andrew barely slept. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario, every question Tarara's lawyer might ask, every lie she might tell. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, he gave up and went to check on Miles. His son was sprawled across his bed, covers kicked off, one arm flung above his head. Andrew gently covered him again, and Miles stirred, his eyes opening halfway. "Daddy, I'm here, buddy. Go back to sleep. Will Mom be there tomorrow?" Andrew hadn't told Miles about the hearing. Hadn't wanted to worry him, but kids sense things. Picked up on tension and unspoken concerns. Yes, but it's just grown-ups talking. Nothing for you to worry about. Miles nodded sleepily. Okay, love you, Daddy. Love you, too, Miles. Andrew stood in the doorway after Miles fell back asleep, watching the gentle rise and fall of his son's chest, and made a silent promise. Tomorrow he would be calm, strategic, unshakable. Tomorrow he would make sure Miles never had to worry about being sent away again. Tomorrow, Tara Lundell's comfortable lies would meet the uncomfortable truth. And Andrew Ward would make certain the truth won. Act in 2. The courthouse in Cedar Glen sat at the center of town, a structure of stone and aged wood that had witnessed decades of marriages, divorces, disputes, and resolutions. The building felt cold in the morning light, imposing in its authority, and Andrew felt the weight of it as he climbed the steps with Marlon at his side. Remember, Marlon said quietly, his briefcase heavy in his hand, stay calm. Answer questions directly. Don't volunteer extra information. Let me handle the legal arguments. I understand. And Andrew, Marlon paused at the door. Whatever she says in there, however she tries to spin this, don't react. Don't give her the satisfaction. Show the judge who you are by how you handle yourself. Andrew nodded. He dressed carefully that morning. Clean jeans, a button-down shirt, his best boots. Not pretending to be something he wasn't, but showing respect for the process. He wanted the judge to see a working man who cared about his son, not someone putting on an act. They entered the courtroom and Andrew's eyes immediately found Tara. She sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Vo, who had a reputation for aggressive defense strategies. Tara wore a conservative dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She dressed to look like a struggling mother, responsible and overwhelmed. Andrew noticed her hands shaking slightly as she clutched a tissue. Ree was nowhere to be seen, smart of her lawyer to keep him away. The bailiff called the room to order and Judge Catherine Brennan entered. She was in her 50s with steel gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd heard every possible excuse and believed none of them until proven otherwise. Andrew felt a flicker of hope. This was a judge who would look at evidence, not performances. We're here for the matter of Ward versus Lundell regarding custody modification. Judge Brennan began settling into her seat. Mr. Vance, you filed the emergency motion. Present your case. Marlon stood buttoning his jacket. Thank you, Your Honor. My client, Andrew Ward, is seeking full custody of his son, Miles Ward, age 4, based on documented child endangerment by the respondent, Tara Lundell. On October 15 of this year, at approximately 2:07 a.m., Miles was found by Missouri State Highway Patrol walking alone on Route 17. He was cold, frightened, and injured. When asked how he came to be on the highway, Miles stated that his mother told him he cost too much and that he needed to leave to find his father. Tara's lawyer stood. Your Honor, if I may, the child is 4 years old. He's not a reliable narrator. Ms. Lundell has stated that her son wandered out while she was asleep. This was a terrible accident, but not intentional endangerment. Judge Brennan held up a hand. You'll have your turn, Ms. Voss. Continue, Mr. Vance. Marlon nodded. We have the police report from Trooper Daniels, who was first on scene. We have photographs of Miles's condition that night. We have documented statements from neighbors who have witnessed a pattern of neglect over the past 2 years. And we have testimony from an expert witness regarding Miss Lundell's current boyfriend and his documented history of child endangerment. The judge's eyebrows rose slightly. A boyfriend with a criminal history. Not criminal, Your Honor, but documented by Child Protective Services. Ree Calder was investigated 3 years ago for leaving a 2-year-old child alone in a motel room for 8 hours while he gambled at a casino. The charges were dropped when the mother declined to press them, but the investigation report still exists. Miss Lundell has been living with Mr. Calder for approximately 3 months. We have testimony from his exordiner that his behavior toward children is consistent and dangerous. Tara leaned toward her lawyer, whispering urgently. Patricia Vo's expression tightened. Your Honor, Vo said, standing again. Miss Lundell's relationship with Mr. Calder is irrelevant to this case. She is the mother. She is primary custody. One incident of a child found alone on a highway at 2 a.m. is hardly minor. Ms. Voss. Judge Brennan interrupted. I'll hear the evidence. Mr. Vance, call your first witness. The petitioner calls Trooper Robert Daniels. The state trooper entered through the side door, still in uniform, his expression professional but sympathetic. He was sworn in and took the stand. Marlon approached. Trooper Daniels, can you describe the events of October 15th? Yes, sir. At approximately 1:55 a.m., I was on patrol along Route 17, when I spotted what appeared to be a small child walking along the shoulder. I pulled over and found Miles Ward, age 4, wearing pajamas and no shoes. The temperature was approximately 48 degrees. The child was cold, frightened, and had a minor injury to his knee. What did Miles tell you when you asked how he came to be there? He said his mother told him he had to leave because he cost too much. He said she told him to go find his daddy. Was the child certain about this? Did he seem confused or unreliable? No, sir. He was clear and consistent. He repeated the same story multiple times in the same words. In my experience, that's often an indicator of truth. Children who are making things up tend to change details. What was the child's emotional state? Traumatized, shaking, crying, difficult to console. That level of distress in a child that young. It stays with you. Marlon nodded. Thank you, Trooper. No further questions. Patricia Vos stood for cross-examination, her expression sharp. Trooper Daniels, you said Miles claimed his mother told him to leave, but you didn't witness this conversation, correct? No, ma'am. And you're not a child psychologist qualified to determine whether a 4-year-old is a reliable witness. I'm a father of 3, and I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know when a child is telling the truth, but you can't know that for certain, can you? I know the child was on a highway in the middle of the night. However he got there, someone failed him. Judge Brennan intervened. Miss Voss, do you have questions about Trooper Daniels' observations, or are you just arguing? No further questions, Your Honor. Marlon called his next witness, Darlene Fritz. The elderly woman entered nervously, her hands clutching her purse, but her voice was steady when she took the oath. Marlon guided her through her testimony carefully. Miss Fritz, how often do you see Miles Ward? 2-3 times a week usually. His mother brings him to me when she needs a sitter. How often does Miss Lundell request your help? Lately, very often, sometimes with only a few minutes' notice. Sometimes she says she'll be back in an hour and doesn't return until the next day. Has Miss Lundell ever left Miles with you overnight without warning? Yes, twice that I can remember. I woke up and he was still on my couch. Miss Fritz, you live 3 doors down from Miss Lundell. Have you observed how she treats Miles when she's home? Darlene's expression saddened. I can hear them through the walls. Our houses are close. That boy cries for her at night. Every night, and she doesn't answer or she yells at him to be quiet. Objection. Patricia Vaux called. Hearsay, Your Honor. This is an observation from a neighbor regarding a pattern of neglect. Marlon countered. I'll allow it. Judge Brennan said, continue, Miss Fritz. In your observation, is Miles's mother attentive to his needs? No. Darlene's voice was firm. I don't think she wants to be a mother. I think she sees the child as a burden. Objection. Sustained. Miss Fritz, please stick to what you've observed, not your interpretations. Yes, Your Honor. I've observed her leaving him alone, yelling at him, ignoring him when he cries. Is that better? Andrew saw Tara's face flush red, her hands clenching in her lap. Patricia Voss whispered to her urgently, probably telling her not to react. After Darlene came the grocery store clerk, then the gas station manager, then the elderly neighbor across the street. Each testimony added another layer to the picture. A mother who prioritized herself over her child, who saw Miles as an inconvenience, who left him alone and uncared for. Then Marlon called Alicia Briner. She entered the courtroom looking nervous but determined, her eyes briefly meeting Tara's before looking away. When she was sworn in, Marlon asked her to identify herself. I'm Alicia Briner. I was in a relationship with Reese Calder for 2 years. We have a daughter together, Ms. Brenner. Can you describe Mr. Calder's behavior toward children? He doesn't like them. Sees them as competition for attention and money. When we were together, he'd leave our daughter alone for hours. Once he locked her in a room so she wouldn't bother him while he played video games. Are you aware of the incident 3 years ago involving Mr. Calder and her daughter? Yes. He left her alone in a motel room while he went gambling. She was 2 years old. She was found by housekeeping the next morning alone for 8 hours. Why were charges dropped? Alicia's voice dropped. Because I lied. He convinced me to say it was a misunderstanding, that I'd asked him to watch her and he'd made a mistake. I protected him and I've regretted it every day since. Why are you testifying today? Because I fail my daughter. Then I won't fail another child now. If Miles is living with Ree, he's in danger. Ree doesn't change. He manipulates vulnerable women and he sees their children as obstacles. Patricia Vaux's cross-examination was brutal but ineffective. She tried to paint Alicia as a bitter ex with an axe to grind, but Alicia remained calm and consistent. Ms. Briner, isn't it true you're still angry at Mr. Calder for leaving you? I'm grateful he left. It gave me a chance to get my daughter to safety. You're testifying against him out of spite. I'm testifying because I know what he is and I know what happens to children around him. After Alicia stepped down, Marlon turned to Andrew. The petitioner calls Andrew Ward. Andrew stood, his legs steady, his mind clear. He'd been preparing for this moment all week. He took the stand, was sworn in, and faced Marlon. Mr. Ward, describe your relationship with your son. I love him. He's the most important thing in my life. Describe a typical day when Miles is with you. I wake him up gently. We have breakfast together, something nutritious, balanced. I ask him about his dreams. We talk about what he wants to do that day. I take him to preschool, pick him up, help with whatever homework or activities he has. We make dinner together. He helps me set the table. We read before bed. He chooses the books. How does Miles behave when he's with you? He's happy, relaxed. He laughs more, plays more confidently. He sleeps through the night. He doesn't flinch at sudden movements. Does he flinch when he's been with his mother? Yes. And he hoards food, hides snacks in his pockets like he's afraid there won't be more. Have you documented Miles's condition when he returns from his mother's care? Yes, I have photographs of bruises, of clothes that are too small, of times when he's been returned hungry and unwashed. Marlon submitted the evidence, folders full of photographs dated and annotated. Judge Brennan looked through them, her expression growing grimmer with each page. Patricia Voss's cross-examination tried to paint Andrew as controlling, as someone who resented paying child support, as a father who manipulated his son. Mr. Ward, isn't it true you tried to take custody before? I've expressed concerns about my son's safety. Yes. Concerns that child services didn't find credible. Tara is very good at lying. Objection sustained. Mr. Ward, answer the question that was asked. Child services close a case. That doesn't mean there wasn't a problem. It means Tara convinced them there wasn't. You're bitter about your divorce. I'm grateful for my divorce. It gave me clarity about who Tara really is. You hate Ms. Lundell. I don't hate her. I pity her. She's a woman who had a child she didn't want and can't love, and now she's destroying him piece by piece. Objection. Withdrawn. Patricia Voss snapped. No further questions. Andrew returned to his seat. Marlon squeezed his shoulder briefly. Well done. Then it was Tara's turn. She took the stand, looking appropriately emotional. Eyes red, tissue in hand, posture humble. Patricia Voss guided her through a carefully crafted narrative. Ms. Lundell, describe what happened the night of October 15th. I was exhausted. I've been working all day and Miles had been difficult, not listening, throwing tantrums. I put him to bed and fell asleep myself. The next thing I knew, the police were calling saying they'd found him. I was horrified. You didn't tell him to leave? Of course not. I love my son. I would never send him out into the night. Why do you think Miles said you did? He's 4. He doesn't always understand what's real and what he's imagined. And Andrew, she glanced at Andrew, her expression wounded. Andrew has been turning him against me since the divorce, telling him I don't care, that I don't want him. Objection, Marlon said wearily. There's no evidence Mr. Ward has done any such thing. Your Honor, Ms. Lundell is explaining her son's state of mind. I'll allow it, but tread carefully, Miss Voss. The testimony continued. Tara painted herself as an overwhelmed single mother doing her best, a victim of circumstance and Andrew's manipulation. She cried at appropriate moments. She spoke about how much she loved Miles, how hard she tried. When Marlon stood for cross-examination, his expression was neutral, but his questions were surgical. Miss Lundell, you testified that you were asleep when Miles left the house. Where was Reese called her? Tara hesitated. I don't know. He wasn't there that night. Are you certain? Because we have a witness who saw his car in your driveway until approximately 1:30 a.m. He might have stopped by earlier, but he was gone by the time I went to sleep. So, you're not certain where Mr. Calder was that night? No. M. Lundell. Were you aware of Mr. Calder's history with Child Protective Services? No. We don't talk about his past relationships. Even though he's living in your home with your son, he doesn't live with me. He stays over sometimes. How often? I don't know, a few nights a week. So, a man with a documented history of child endangerment stays in your home multiple nights per week around your 4-year-old son, and you didn't think to ask about his past. Tara's composure was cracking. He's good to Miles. He helps out, does he? We have testimony from neighbors that they've heard him yelling at Miles, that they've seen him ignore the child for hours. That's not people are exaggerating. Ms. Lundell, the night Miles was found on the highway. Where were you? I told you I was asleep. Your phone records show you made calls at midnight, 1 a.m., and 1:30 a.m. you were awake. Tara's face drained of color. I was calling Ree, so you weren't asleep. You lied to this court. I was confused about the timeline where you were awake when you sent your son out into the night. I didn't send him out. Then explain how a 4-year-old boy in pajamas ended up walking a highway at 2 o'clock in the morning. Ms. Lundell. Because the alternative is that you were so neglectful, so inattentive that your child could disappear from your home and you didn't notice. Which story makes you look better? Tara burst into tears. Real ones this time, not performed. I was trying to help him. He wanted to see his father. He was crying and I was tired and I thought if he walked to the corner he'd realize it was too far and come back. I thought he'd come back. The courtroom went silent. Patricia Vaux's face was ashen. Marlon remained still, letting the words hang in the air. Judge Brennan leaned forward. Ms. Lundell, are you telling this court that you intentionally sent your 4-year-old son out of your home at night to teach him a lesson? Tara was sobbing now, her careful facade completely shattered. I didn't mean I thought he was so difficult and I was so tired. Your Honor, Patricia Vaux interrupted desperately. My client is clearly overwhelmed. Your client just admitted to child endangerment. Judge Brennan said coldly. Sit down, Miss Vaux. The judge shuffled through papers, her expression severe. And she looked up, her gaze moving between Tara and Andrew. I've seen a lot of custody cases. I've heard a lot of excuses, but I have never, she paused, her voice hardening. Never heard a mother admit to sending her child out into the night as punishment. Miss Lundell, you endangered your child's life. You lied to police. You lied to this court. You have demonstrated a pattern of neglect that puts your son at risk. Your Honor, please. I'm not finished. The judge's voice was steel. Custody of Miles Ward is awarded fully and permanently to Andrew Ward. Ms. Lundell, you are granted supervised visitation only 1 hour per week supervised by court-appointed guardian. You will undergo evaluation by Child Protective Services. You will complete parenting classes. And if you violate any of these conditions, you will lose visitation entirely. Do you understand? Tara's sobs were her only answer. Do you understand, Miss Lundell? Yes, she choked out. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sound like finality itself. Andrew sat still, letting the moment settle. He'd won. Miles was his safe, protected, away from Tara's neglect and Reese's influence. He'd won. Tara was still crying at her table. Patricia Vaux speaking to her in low, urgent tones. Andrew watched without emotion. He'd warned himself never to forgive her, and he felt no temptation to soften now. This was justice. Clean, clear, undeniable. Marlon packed up his briefcase. Let's get out of here. They left through the side door, avoiding the main hallway where Tara would eventually emerge. Outside, the autumn sun was bright, the air crisp and clean. Andrew, Marlon said quietly, you did good in there. Stayed calm, told the truth. Let the evidence speak. That's why we won. No, Andrew said. We won because Tara couldn't stop being who she is, even when it mattered most. That, too. They shook hands and Andrew walked to his truck. He sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, hands on the wheel, letting the reality settle. Miles was safe. Tara had no power over him anymore. The nightmare that started on a dark highway had ended in a courtroom with justice served. Andrew started the engine and drove toward Miles's preschool to pick up his son permanently now, and tell him he was home for good. In the weeks that followed the custody hearing, the full weight of Tara's collapse became visible. Andrew hadn't asked for it, hadn't orchestrated it beyond winning custody, but he watched it unfold with the same cold detachment he'd cultivated since that night at the police station. 2 weeks after the hearing, Andrew received a call from Trooper Daniels. Mr. Ward, thought you should know. We conducted a follow-up investigation at Ms. Lundell's residence. Found evidence of continued neglect. The state of the apartment. Evidence Mr. Calder was living there despite her testimony. Child Protective Services has opened a full investigation. Will this affect her visitation? Possibly. Depends what else they find. But between you and me, she's lucky she's not facing criminal charges. Judges don't forget parents who admit to endangering their kids. Andrew thanked him and hung up. He felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just acknowledgement that the system was working as it should. 3 weeks after the hearing, Darlene Fritz called with an update. Andrew, honey, I thought you should know. Tara lost her job. She missed too many shifts dealing with investigations and court dates. And she paused. Police came around asking questions about him. He left, moved out overnight from what I could see. Did he leave Tara or did she kick him out? Don't know. But she's alone now. Her car is there, but I haven't seen her in days. I've heard crying through the walls, though. All hours. Andrew thanked her and hung up. He imagined Tara in that duplex alone. Her support system gone, her job gone, her child gone. He felt no pity. She'd built this prison herself, brick by brick, with every choice she'd made. A month after the hearing, on a cold November evening, Andrew was making dinner with Miles when he heard a car door slam in his driveway. He glanced out the window and saw Tara's car, dented and dirty, parked at an angle. Then Tara herself appeared, walking toward the house. She looked wrecked. Her hair was unwashed, her makeup smeared, her clothes wrinkled. She'd lost weight, her face gaunt and hollow. She looked like a woman who'd lost everything and didn't know how to begin rebuilding. Miles, buddy, go play in your room for a few minutes. Okay. Is that Mom? Andrew saw the uncertainty in his son's face. Not excitement, not longing, just caution. Miles had asked about Tara a few times in the past month, but never with any urgency. You seemed content here, settled, happier every day. Yeah, I'll go talk to her. You stay inside. Miles nodded and disappeared down the hall. Andrew stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind him. Tara stood at the bottom of the steps, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Andrew, please. Her voice was raw, desperate. This wasn't a performance. This was genuine desperation from a woman who'd hit bottom and found it harder than she'd expected. Please, what? Don't take him from me. I know I made mistakes. I know I was wrong, but he's my son. I can be better. I swear I can be better. Andrew looked at her and saw not the woman he'd married, but the woman she'd become through her own choices. Every decision that prioritized herself over Miles. Every moment she treated their son as a burden rather than a gift. Every lie she'd told to cover her negligence. Miles isn't a paycheck, Tara. He's not a burden. He's a child who deserved better than what you gave him. She climbed 2 steps, reaching toward him. I know. I know that now, but I can change. Give me a chance. I gave you 4 years of chances. You used every one of them to hurt him a little more. Andrew, I'm begging you. You never gave him what he needed. Not once. Not when he cried for you at night. Not when he was hungry. Not when he needed to feel safe. You gave him nothing. Tears streamed down her face, her mascara making dark tracks on her cheeks. I love him. No, you don't. You love the idea of him. You love the control, the attention, the sympathy people give single mothers. But Miles himself, you never love him enough to put him first. She sobbed, her body shaking. Please, Andrew, don't do this. Don't take away my only chance. This isn't me taking anything. This is you losing what you threw away. She reached for him again and he stepped back, his hand on the door handle. This is the last time we speak outside of court. You have supervised visitation starting next week. 1 hour once a week with a monitor present. If you miss a session, you lose the next one. If you cause problems, you lose them all. Those are the terms. Andrew, that's the deal. Tara, take it or walk away. But you don't get to come here and beg for mercy. You never showed our son. She stared at him, her face crumpling. You've destroyed my life. No, I protected my son. You destroyed your own life. Those are very different things. You stepped back inside and closed the door. Not a slam. That would have been emotional, reactive, just a quiet, firm closing. The final punctuation on a conversation that was over. Through the window, he watched Tara stand on the steps for a long moment, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Then she turned and stumbled back to her car. The engine started, coughed, started again. She drove away, the tail lights disappearing into the November darkness. Andrew felt nothing. Not victory, not relief, not guilt, just the clean certainty that he'd done what needed to be done. Miles appeared in the hallway, his dinosaur blanket trailing behind him. Is Mom gone? Yeah, buddy. She's gone. Is she coming back? Eventually, you'll see her sometimes with someone there to make sure everything's okay. But you live here now. This is home. Miles nodded, processing this. Then quietly, I'm glad. Andrew pulled his son into a hug, breathing in the scent of kid shampoo and safety, and felt something shift inside him. Not the cold hardness that had sustained him through the battle, but something warmer. Not forgiveness for Tara, never that, but peace with the outcome. He'd fought for his son. He'd won. Miles was safe. That was all that mattered. The weeks turned into months. Winter settled over Redwood Crossing, bringing snow and cold and the quiet rhythm of a new life. Andrew established routines with Miles. Breakfast together, school drop-offs, pickups, homework at the kitchen table, dinner, bedtime stories. The cameras he'd installed for documentation became less necessary as Miles's behavior improved. The hoarding stopped, the flinching stopped, the nightmares stopped. Miles laughed more, played more confidently, made friends at preschool, drew pictures that showed happy families, houses with windows full of light, sons with big smiles. Tara attended her supervised visitations sporadically at first, missing 2 out of the first 4. The court monitor reported that when she did come, she spent most of the hour crying and asking Miles if he missed her. Miles's responses were polite, but distant. He'd answer her questions, accept her hugs, but showed no real attachment. The monitor noted in her reports that the child seemed more relieved when visitation ended than sad. After 3 months, Tara stopped showing up entirely. Her rights weren't terminated. She still had the theoretical ability to see Miles once a week, but she simply stopped trying. Andrew received a letter from her lawyer stating that Ms. Lundell was working on herself and would resume visitation when she was in a better place. Andrew filed the letter with all the other documentation and said nothing. If Tara wanted to fade from Miles's life entirely, that was her choice. He wouldn't prevent her from having a relationship with her son if she genuinely changed. But he also wouldn't pretend to miss her presence. Miles asked about his mother less and less frequently as winter progressed. Is Mom okay? Became, does Mom know it's my birthday? Became silence. Not hostile silence, not painful silence, just the quiet acceptance of a child who'd found stability and wasn't interested in disrupting it. On a bright January afternoon, 4 months after the custody hearing, Andrew took Miles to the lake behind their house. The water was partially frozen, the surrounding trees bare, but beautiful against the pale sky. They sat on the small dock, their legs dangling over the edge, bundled in winter coats and sharing a thermos of hot chocolate. "Daddy," Miles said, watching his breath form clouds in the cold air. "Are we safe now?" The question hit Andrew unexpectedly, not because he didn't know the answer, but because it revealed how much fear Miles had been carrying. How long he'd felt unsafe, uncertain, unable to trust the world around him. Andrew wrapped an arm around his son, pulling him close. "Yeah, buddy. We're safe. You're home, and I'll always protect you. I promise." Miles leaned against him, small and solid and trusting. "Good. I like it when things are safe." "Me, too." They sat in silence for a while, watching the frozen lake shimmer in the winter sun. Andrew thought about the night this all began. The phone call at 2 a.m., the terror of seeing his son wrapped in a police jacket, the cold determination that had settled in his chest. He'd promised himself he would never forgive Tara. That promise held true. What she'd done, sending a 4-year-old into the night as punishment, prioritizing her own convenience over her child's safety, was unforgivable. He felt no obligation to soften that judgment, no pressure to move on or let go. Some things shouldn't be forgiven. Some people don't deserve second chances. Not because they can't change, but because the harm they caused was too fundamental, too deliberate. But more important than his refusal to forgive, was his commitment to moving forward. He'd won the battle not through anger or revenge, but through patience, documentation, and letting the truth speak for itself. He'd stayed calm when Tara had tried to provoke him. He'd gathered evidence when emotion would have been easier. He'd played the long game and he'd won. And now, sitting beside his son on a frozen lake, Andrew felt something he hadn't expected. Not triumph, but contentment. The cold, hard determination that had driven him through the custody battle was thawing, being replaced by something warmer and more sustainable. The simple satisfaction of being exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. "Can we make hot chocolate again tomorrow?" Miles asked, interrupting his thoughts. "Sure, buddy. Every day if you want." Miles smiled, his cheeks pink from the cold. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you, too, Miles." As the sun began to set over Redwood Crossing, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Andrew felt the weight of the past months finally lifting. Tara had tried to break their son's future, but she'd only succeeded in destroying her own. She had chosen neglect over care, convenience over responsibility, selfishness over love, and she'd paid the price for those choices. Andrew didn't celebrate her downfall. He didn't gloat or feel vindicated. He simply acknowledged it as the natural consequence of her actions, the inevitable result of treating a child as a burden rather than a gift. He would never regret fighting for Miles. He would never regret the long nights of documentation, the careful gathering of evidence, the patient construction of a case that couldn't be denied. He would never regret staying calm when Tara tried to provoke him or remaining focused when emotion would have been easier. And he would never regret letting Tara fall. She'd built her own destruction choice by choice, lie by lie. Andrew had simply held up a mirror so everyone could see the truth. That wasn't cruelty. That was justice. Daddy. Miles tugged on his sleeve. I'm cold. Can we go inside? Yeah, buddy. Let's go home. They walked back to the house together. Miles's small hand in Andrew's larger one, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. Inside, warmth waited. Lights in every window. Dinner cooking on the stove. A life built on stability and care and love. This was victory. Not the dramatic, explosive kind for movies, but the quiet, sustainable kind that mattered. The kind where a child felt safe enough to laugh, secure enough to sleep through the night. Loved enough to trust that tomorrow would be okay. Tara had cost them years of that peace, but she couldn't take the future that belonged to Andrew and Miles. Now, built on a foundation she could never touch. As Andrew helped Miles out of his coat and turned on the lights in the kitchen, he thought about the man he'd become through this ordeal. Harder, yes, less willing to trust, less inclined to give second chances, but also more certain of what mattered, more committed to protecting what he loved, more willing to fight battles that needed fighting. He didn't regret any of it. And as Miles settled at the kitchen table with crayons and paper, humming to himself while he drew another picture of their house, Andrew knew he'd made the right choices. Every single one. Tara Lundell had walked out of their lives as completely as she'd sent Miles out into the night. The difference was that Miles had found his way home. Tara was still lost. And Andrew Ward, standing in his kitchen watching his son draw pictures of sunshine and smiling faces, felt absolutely no obligation to help her find her way back. Some people deserve to stay lost. That was simply the truth. In truth, Andrew had learned was the most powerful weapon of all.